Well, well, well. It's that time of the year again, March Madness. So I'm going to do this again just for fun. I'm not an expert or anything, so if you want someone that knows a lot about college basketball, this is not the video for you. This is just for fun. I don't know much about it. I don't watch it barely. I mean, I'll hear news about it and that's it. I just like doing it for fun. So, yeah. I've been doing this the past 2 years, even though not many people watch those videos. Maybe it's because they're long and I'm not an expert at this. So I'm going to go as fast as I can this time. I'm also going to do the women's tournament challenge. Yes, I see that there's a women's tournament challenge as well. So we're going to do both. We're going to start off with the men's tournament challenge first. So let's go right into it. Create a bracket. Oh my gosh. You can create up to 25 brackets, and you know what? I did that. I think I did that 2 years ago. I don't think I'll do that again. All right, let's start. And look, they're calling the east side, the south side, the west side, and the midwest side. Like, why can't you just call it A, B, C, and D? You know? Whatever. Round of 64. And I am recording this the day before March Madness starts. So, here we go. The defending champs, UConn. Man, they dominated last year's. Although they didn't really have to play many hard teams because there were so many upsets last year. And you know what? I'll pick a bunch of upsets, meaning I'll get a bunch of them wrong. Yes, whenever I do this, my bracket always falls apart that fast. But I'm not surprised. It's just for fun. So let's go. UConn versus Stetson. Never heard of Stetson, so I'm going with the champs. FAU versus Northwestern. Yeah, apparently FAU was in last year's Final Four. I'm not going to pick them. Northwestern. San Diego State versus UAB. San Diego State was also in the Final Four, but I'm not going to pick them. UAB. Auburn versus Yale. I heard that Auburn is pretty good, so I'll go with them. BYU versus DeQuincy. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm picking BYU. Illinois versus Morehead State. Never heard of Morehead State, so I'm going with Illinois. Washington State versus Drake. I am going with Washington State. Iowa State versus South Dakota State. I'll go with Iowa State. Okay, so that is the east side. Let's go to the south side. Houston versus Longwood. I picked Houston last year to go all the way. I'm going to pick them to win the first game. Nebraska versus Texas A&M. Wait a minute. Johnny Talk Sports, if you're watching this, these are two of your favorite teams, right? Or is that only for football? I don't know if you're a fan of their basketball as well. You can also click on the preview. Oh, this is like a different window. Oh yeah, it tells you where the game's going to be at, what network, what time, and all that. No, I guess it doesn't. I guess ESPN doesn't have the predictor. The 8 versus a 9 seed can really go either way. I'll go with Nebraska. Wisconsin versus James Madison. I'll go with Wisconsin. Duke versus Vermont. I'll go with Duke. Texas Tech versus NC State. I'll go with NC State. Kentucky versus Oakland. Never heard of Oakland. What do they mean by Oakland? What's the city Oakland? Hey, what was it like 2 years ago? Kentucky lost in the first round against St. Peter's. I don't believe that'll happen again. Florida versus we have it's like a tiebreaker game between Boise and Colorado. Is this Boise State? Uh, you know what? Let's go with the winner of that game. I guess you can call that an upset. Marquette versus Western Kentucky. Let's go with Marquette. All right, that's the south side. And I'm not changing these. Once I click on them, I'm moving on. To the west side, North Carolina versus Wagner. Never heard of Wagner, so I'm going with North Carolina. Mississippi State versus Michigan State. Up 8 versus 9 seed. Could go either way. I'll go with Michigan State. St. Mary's versus Grand Canyon. Wasn't St. Mary's in the Elite 8 or the Final 4 that one year? I'll go with St. Mary's. Alabama versus Charleston. I heard that Alabama's not as good as they were the past 2 years, but I'm still going to pick Bama. Clemson versus New Mexico. I heard that people are saying that New Mexico can win this game, so I guess I'll pick them, meaning that I'll get this one wrong. Baylor versus Colgate. Upset alert. I'll go with Colgate. Dayton versus Nevada. Let's go with... I have no idea. Isn't Dayton in Ohio? They're the 7th seed. Alright, well, let's go with Dayton then. Arizona versus Long Beach State. Is Long Beach State in California? I'll go with Arizona. To the Midwest, Purdue versus another tiebreaker game between... Is this Montana State and Grambling? Purdue. Last year, Purdue lost in the first round of 64. They lost to, what, Fairleigh Dickinson? There's no way that's going to happen again. No way Purdue's going to lose in their first game. Utah State versus TCU. Let's go with Utah State. Gonzaga versus McNeese. I'll go with Gonzaga. Kansas versus Samford. Here's an upset alert. Samford. South Carolina versus Oregon. Oregon. Creighton versus Akron. I'll go with Creighton. Texas versus Colorado State. Colorado State. Tennessee versus St. Peter's. You know what? Upset alert again. Let's have St. Peter's pull off another crazy upset. All right, so that's the round of 64 to the round of 32. UConn versus Northwestern. UConn. UAB versus Auburn. I'll go with Auburn. BYU versus Illinois. I'll go with Illinois. Washington State versus Iowa State. Upset alert. Washington State. Houston versus Nebraska. Another upset. Wisconsin versus Duke. Wisconsin. NC State versus Kentucky. Another upset alert. Uh-oh. Boise State or Colorado versus Marquette. Marquette. Back down here. North Carolina versus Michigan State. North Carolina. St. Mary's versus Alabama. Another upset. St. Mary's. Oh, maybe that's not really an upset because it's a 5 versus 4. New Mexico versus Colgate. I'll keep going with New Mexico. Dayton versus Arizona. Arizona. Purdue versus Utah State. I'll go with Purdue. Gonzaga versus Samford. I guess Gonzaga. Oregon versus Creighton. Let's go with Creighton. Colorado State versus St. Peter's. Ooh. St. Peter's again. Why not? To the Sweet 16, UConn versus Auburn. I'll go with UConn again. Illinois versus Washington State. I'll go with Illinois. Nebraska versus Wisconsin. Let's go with Nebraska again. NC State versus Marquette. I'm going to go with Marquette. North Carolina versus St. Mary's. I'll go with St. Mary's. New Mexico versus Arizona. Arizona. Purdue versus Gonzaga, I'll go with Purdue. Creighton versus St. Peter's, I'll go with Creighton. This is the Elite Eight. UConn versus Illinois, I'm going to go with UConn. Nebraska versus Marquette. Marquette. This is to the Final Four. St. Mary's versus Arizona. Arizona. Purdue versus Creighton. Creighton can win this game. Sure, Creighton. All right, I got UConn versus Arizona in the Final Four. Let's go with... Oh my gosh, and the Final Four is in Arizona. Well, I guess I'm going to pick Arizona then. Marquette versus Creighton. Let's go with Creighton. The finals, I got Arizona versus Creighton. And the winner is going to be... Arizona. Why not? And I'm not answering that tiebreaker. Submit bracket. I picked Arizona. I don't know if I ever picked Arizona as like my real bracket. Maybe I have, but if I have, it's been years. And I am not creating another bracket. Well, I can create a few more, maybe off video, but I'm not going to do all 25. Okay, how long is this video? Oh, okay, 12 minutes. We have time to do the women's bracket. Let's do that. Here we go. This is my first time doing the Women's Tournament Challenge. Same thing, you can create up to 25 brackets. Now, I've heard some women's basketball news, and I think women's basketball is more exciting than the men's basketball this year, in my opinion. Oh, it's already saying, pick Iowa to win. Think Caitlin Clark and the Hawkeyes will cut down the nets? Pick them to win your bracket here. So, wait, I can just click on this? What happens? Wait, there's no autofill. There used to be an autofill. This is a print button. What happens if I just pick Iowa? Oh, that's what happens? Oh, it picks all the favorites. It picks all the favorites. The finals is in Ohio. Alright, well, let's just submit this, and I'm going to do another one as my real one. Here's my real one, alright? I know that South Carolina is undefeated, so... What is with these tiebreaker games? I don't know what these are. South Carolina. Again, I don't know much about women's basketball as well, so this is just for fun, just picking random teams. North Carolina versus Michigan State, 8 or a 9 seed, that could go either way. Oh, let's have a South versus North Carolina matchup. Oklahoma versus FGCU, don't know what that is, so I'm picking Oklahoma. Indiana versus Fairfield, never heard of Fairfield. Indiana. Are you serious? We're having Nebraska and Texas A&M on the women's side as well? Well, I guess I'll pick Texas A&M this time. This is weird. Oregon State versus Eastern Washington. Oregon State. Ole Miss versus Marquette. I'll go with Ole Miss. Notre Dame versus Kent State. I'll go with Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame won the national championship a couple of years ago. Yes, Iowa. West Virginia versus Princeton. Let's go with West Virginia. Colorado versus Drake. Let's go with Colorado. Kansas State versus Portland. Let's go with Kansas State. I really don't know if there's a lot of upsets on the women's side. There could be, but I don't know. Louisville versus Middle Tennessee. Louisville. LSU versus Rice, the champions from last year. There's no way they're going to lose to Rice. Creighton versus UNLV. That's Las Vegas. Let's go with Las Vegas. UCLA versus what is this? California Baptist. I've never heard of that, so I'll go with UCLA. Wow, there's also a round of 64. Instead, on this, they call it Regional 1, Regional 2, Regional 3, Regional 4. Why can't they call it the same for the men's basketball? I have no idea. And you know what's kind of stupid in my opinion? The men's and the women's basketball March Madness tournaments are happening at the same time. Like, it is hard to watch both. We have a ton of basketball, guys. But I don't really have much to worry about since I'm not really a big fan. I'm just doing this for fun. Texas versus Drexel. Never heard of Drexel. Go with Texas. Alabama versus Florida State. I guess I'll go with Florida State. Utah versus South Dakota State. I'll go with Utah. Gonzaga versus, what is this? UC Irvine. I've heard of that, but I don't know where that is, so I'm going with the Gonzaga. Tennessee versus Green Bay. Look at that. Tennessee has a different logo. I like that. That's for the ladies basketball. Green Bay. not the Green Bay Packers. Well, I gotta go with the Lady Volunteers. NC State versus Chattanooga. Let's go with Chattanooga. Yeah, let's have a Tennessee versus Chattanooga game. Iowa State versus Maryland. I'll go with Maryland. Stanford versus Norfolk State. I'll go with Stanford. USC versus Texas A&M CC. I don't know what the CC stands for. I'll go with USC. Kansas versus Michigan. I'll go with Kansas. Baylor versus, what is this? Vanderbilt versus Colorado. I'll go with Baylor. Virginia Tech versus Marshall. I'll go with Virginia Tech. Syracuse versus, what is with these tiebreaker games? Why are they playing games to go to March Madness? Like, whatever. Syracuse. This is Auburn versus Arizona. UConn versus Jackson State. I guess UConn. Duke versus Richmond. I'll go with Duke. Ohio State versus Maine. I'll go with Ohio State. Like I said, guys, this is just for fun. I am not an expert or anything. I don't know anything about these teams. I just know very little news, okay? South Carolina versus North Carolina. South Carolina wins again. Oklahoma versus Indiana. I'll go with Indiana. A&M versus Oregon State. I'll go with Oregon State. Ole Miss versus Notre Dame. I'll go with Notre Dame. Iowa versus West Virginia. Let's go with Iowa. Colorado versus Kansas State. I'll go with Colorado. Louisville versus LSU. I'll go with LSU. UNLV versus UCLA. I'll go with UCLA. Texas versus Florida State. I'll go with Texas. Utah versus Gonzaga. I'll go with Utah. Tennessee versus Chattanooga. Tennessee. Maryland versus Stanford. I guess Stanford. USC versus Kansas. I'll go with USC. Baylor versus Virginia Tech. I'll go with Baylor. Syracuse versus UConn. I'll take Syracuse. Duke versus Ohio State. I guess Ohio State. So yeah, this one I'm not picking as much upsets because I really don't know if there's many upsets on the women's side. There might be. South Carolina versus Indiana in the Sweet 16. South Carolina will remain undefeated again. Oregon State versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame. Iowa versus Colorado. I'll go with Iowa. LSU versus UCLA. I got UCLA beating LSU. Texas versus Utah. I'll go with Utah, I guess. Tennessee versus Stanford. I'll go with Tennessee. USC versus Baylor, I'll go with it's just like you don't know, and I don't want to waste time thinking. USC. Syracuse versus Ohio State. I guess we'll go with Syracuse. Again, once I click on them, I'm not changing them. Ooh, this will be a big game if this happens. South Carolina versus Notre Dame. I'll go with South Carolina. Iowa versus UCLA. I'll go with Iowa to the Final Four. Utah versus Tennessee. I'll go with Tennessee. USC versus Syracuse. I'll go with I guess USC. Final Four. I got three ones. Oh my gosh, this is not good. All SEC Final Four, South Carolina and Tennessee. I'll go with South Carolina. Iowa versus USC. I'll go with Iowa. And because my other bracket had Iowa, I'll go with South Carolina, meaning that they'll be undefeated. Okay. That's it. Get ready for these brackets to be broken right away. So, there you have it. So, I really have two brackets for this. Yeah, immediately it says, oh, pick Iowa to win. Yeah. You know, I would like to see Iowa win it, honestly, because I don't know. I don't really care about this much, but I will hear news along the way, because I listen to some sports podcast shows, so they'll talk about this as the tournament's going on. So, well, that's it. I'll put the link in the description for those of you that want to play. You have until tomorrow. The men's tournament starts tomorrow. I think the first game is at 11 a.m. Central. 11:15. So yeah. Oh, Chick-fil-A, the spicy deluxe sandwich. Is that the sponsor? Oh boy. Welp. I'll show you guys the, well, I guess they don't, do they have the rankings on here? Here, yeah, here's the rankings. Who's the best team right now on the men's side? It's UConn, okay. The champions. Okay. And the women's, the best team is South Carolina, because they are undefeated. That is amazing. You're going to the tournament undefeated? I'm gonna be honest, guys. In my opinion, I know March Madness is exciting and all that, but 64 teams is too much to me. Like, and it's only one game. It's not it's not like a best of 3 where you have to win 2 out of 3. If you lose, you're done. You're out. Like, that kind of sucks. I mean, I don't know. That's just me. Like, the College World Series, the baseball game, that's best of 3. Same with the softball. Women's softball is also best of 3. Why can't basketball be best of 3 as well? It should be 32 teams. Oh well. That's just me. But like I said, I won't be watching much of this, but I'll hear news about it. I'll keep my eyes on it, so yeah. Alright, that is it. I went as fast as I can, because I think some people like it like that, for someone that's not an expert. So, there you have it. I did both the men's and the women's basketball tournament challenge, so if you want to play, click on the links in the description. And until then, we'll see what happens. Bye-bye.